Roc Nation has just announced Roc Nation Distribution, but as an artist, should you sign to it? I've seen so many headlines and YouTube responses, social media analysts talking about this new deal coming from Jay-Z's company, Roc Nation. Is this the new wave in distribution, or is it just another distribution company? I want to get into the actual contractual terms, some things that made me take a minute and pause, and also some things you should be thinking about if you are an independent artist looking to sign with Roc Nation Distribution. Let's get into it. So let's start with this video with a disclaimer. I'm not an independent artist. I'm not a music attorney. All of this is coming from the perspective of a music journalist and somebody who's just curious. Anytime we see someone like a Jay-Z launching a new company, in this case, Roc Nation Distribution, I just want to know, what is going on? So I'm sure you've seen all these headlines about Roc Nation Distribution, and some of my industry heads might remember Roc Nation already had distribution. It was a company called EQT. So it seems that EQT has been pulled into this new Roc Nation Distribution, and this announcement was everywhere. So the big takeaway that I can see just kind of off the top is that Roc Nation Distribution is really focusing on its platform. So let's take a step back for a second. What am I talking about when I even say distribution? So distribution is basically how an artist gets their music distributed. Back in the day, that meant getting into record stores and things like that. And that was something that was closely gate-kept. There's a reason everyone had to sign to a record label to get into the retail space. But now we're in the streaming era and there's so many more players. Of course, you can sign to a traditional label like so many artists do, or you can sign a distribution deal. The main component of distribution in the streaming era is the DSPs, or digital streaming platforms. That's your Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all of those things. So to get your music onto those platforms, and ideally you want to get them into playlists, you want to get them as part of larger marketing campaigns, that's part of distribution. Roc Nation is joining a bunch of other companies who are already in this space. I'm sure you've heard names like United Masters, that's Steve Stout's company, TuneCore, DistroKid. There's a lot of different distributors that are out there. Some of them are by invite only, but things like DistroKid, TuneCore, anyone can be a part of it. All you have to do is register. So why would someone sign to Roc Nation Distribution? So the company itself is touting two big things. The first is this platform that it has, this dashboard. And this company says that this dashboard has access to analytics, real-time insights, observations that artists and their teams can use. Again, I am not an independent artist, but there is a kind of an overview YouTube video that I'll show here really quickly, and you can see some parts of the dashboard. It looks really nice. It looks very elegant. And I think for an artist who kind of wants all of this information consolidated into one space in kind of a very nice packaging, this seems to be a benefit as part of Roc Nation Distribution. The other thing that the company really touts is its revenue model. So Roc Nation takes a 15% of your royalties, and this is off the top. This is on gross, not net. And you as the artist will get 85%. Now, in exchange for that, they're not taking any kind of monthly fee or annual fee. This is something you do see on some of these other distribution platforms. So, for example, something like a DistroKid, TuneCore, there are fees like that. They're not that high of fees, but let's say somebody just is super cash strapped, they have no money to sort of invest in their career, that might be an impediment to getting their music out there. But with Roc Nation Distribution, you don't have that. There is no upfront fee. Once you agree to use their platform, you're basically ready to go. So I'm on Roc Nation Distribution's website. This is what they're advertising as their benefits. Access 200 plus platforms. These are those DSPs. They have the Spotify logo, Apple Music, Tidal. So these are things that they're going to upload your music to. And I'm not sure there are 200 plus platforms, but I think if we think of all the very niche platforms, regional platforms, country specific, I'm sure there are 200 plus platforms. And then here's the data and insights I mentioned. You can track your streams, you can look at who is your audience and glean demographic information, as well as look at social media mentions, viewing sentiment. So I think right now, most artists, it's kind of hodgepodge. Like they do all of these things, but on various different platforms. They go on Spotify for artists to see just the Spotify dashboard, or you're on Instagram looking at the back end to see who are the people that are interacting with you the most. Here, it appears like it consolidates everything into one page and one dashboard. Now, this is where things get interesting. And I haven't seen anyone really in hip hop media talking about this, so if I missed it, please let me know. But I went to the bottom of the page into the terms of use, and this is publicly available. I'm going to put the link in the description. But here are a few things that I found interesting. And if you are an artist, an independent artist, I think it's just something that you need to think of and also talk to your team if you have a team. So the first thing that I found interesting is the grant of rights. So basically this says by uploading content to the Roc Nation service, you're granting the company exclusive, sub-licensable, and worldwide rights to use, publicly perform, communicate to the public, publicly display, reproduce, disseminate, distribute, and otherwise exploit the licensed content via all means of electronic distribution, and it goes on. So kind of like in layman's terms, this is a very, I would say, overarching contract, meaning that if you utilize the Roc Nation distribution, you're very much giving them all of the rights to this music. I mean, there are some distributors that don't do that, and you can actually, it's considered a non-exclusive agreement. But in this case, if you are going to be with Roc Nation, you are going to be with Roc Nation. And that's just something to consider when you're making your decision. This part I also found, a little bit curious. So it says adapt, modify, create derivative works from, and extract your licensed content. So I don't know what that means because I don't know if it's one of those things where, they can use a snippet of your song on social media to promote it. Most people would be cool with that. But in this age of like AI and manipulating people's music or utilizing files and images and words to train other AI, I just don't know how that fits. So that would be something I would be interested in. Again, if someone out there is like a music attorney, I'm sure you have more information and insights, but that was just something that really struck me. Okay, I think this is really the heart of this contract, and this is in bold, so they're not like hiding it, but I feel like no one is really talking about it. It says, your use of the service, Roc Nation Distribution, does not grant you any partnership, agency, endorsement, or contractual relationship with Roc Nation Distribution beyond the scope provided in these terms of service. Here's something to pay attention to. You may not state or imply that you are signed or otherwise affiliated with Roc Nation Distribution, nor may you use any trademarks, logos, copyrighted materials, or any other intellectual property belonging to the company without written prior consent. That's a mouthful. So what does that mean? Okay, let's take a step back. For so many people, the Roc Nation brand means everything. There's a reason when somebody, throws up the diamond. I mean, that's Rockefeller, but, stay with me. They're throwing up the diamond. They're wearing the rock chain. They got the paper planes hat on them. These are very powerful images, and they symbolize, because of Jay-Z and his success, they symbolize success, being a boss, really, being at the highest level of this game. And I think this is very important because there are going to be artists, independent artists, unsigned artists who sign to Roc Nation Distribution thinking that they can now go around telling people, I'm a Roc Nation Distribution artist. According to this contract, you can't. Now, unless you get some sort of written permission or consent separately, that's another story, but they're making it very clear. The Roc Nation Distribution brand is not something you as the artist can be telling people about. And I just wonder, especially in hip hop where cosigns and social proofing are so important, even to this day, sometimes people sign to a label because of what that label brand represents or who the A&R is or getting, certain artist or producer on a track. It's all about the cosign. And I just want to make sure that if there are artists who are signing to Roc Nation Distribution because they love Jay-Z, they love the Roc Nation brand, which has been very successful in the managerial space and the branding space, that they know their relationship is not the same as, let's say, a Rihanna or a Megan Thee Stallion or Clips. Like, even though somebody like the Clips is also signed to Roc Nation Distribution, I did a whole video breaking that down, their decision to leave Def Jam and go to Roc Nation, and that's been a huge success. It's a case study that even Roc Nation Distribution, they talk about, they market it, and it's been a great win-win with the Clips' album doing well. They've had an insane media run, promo run from the Vatican to now the Grammys. It's really been one of the probably most elite rollouts we've seen in hip hop. But the Clips can rep Roc Nation because they're the Clips. If you are an artist, nobody knows who you are, you're not well established, and more importantly, you don't have this consent of the company, just be very careful. Going around telling people you're Roc Nation, using the Plains logo and all of those things, you could get in trouble. So this is just kind of a PSA for those people who are interested in utilizing this distribution platform for that affiliation, for that sort of brand cosign. Don't do it for that. Do it for the other benefits that you could potentially, make use of and leverage. So the last thing that I would say for an artist to look at with these terms of use is the termination clause. So by this agreement, Roc Nation at any time, they can terminate your relationship with this distribution platform. I looked a bunch of times, I did the whole Apple F, try to do a find and all of those things. I can't find anything that says when the artist can terminate. And that's something that is, again, just something to be cognizant of. It's one thing if you're thinking about this being kind of a one-off relationship, I want to upload, and if things aren't going well, I want to be able to remove my music. Per this agreement, I don't think you can. So that's just something to be cognizant of. Some of the other distribution platforms, they have a finite term period. And, so much of this that we're talking about, it really affects the artists who are successful. 99% of artists won't be successful, and that's not a diss to anyone. It's just kind of the numbers. If your music goes nowhere, like, who cares? The issue happens if you end up being that, 1% who does go, get a hit record, goes viral. All of a sudden, you now have major labels coming to you. You have other distributors coming to you. And what happens if they offer a really big advance or they offer really attractive terms? I don't know if you're able to take your music off Roc Nation distribution, or is it there forever? This could be very analogous to when people used to sign to like production deals back in the day, or to like, a small label. And then when the bigger label wanted that artist, they would essentially have to buy them out. So here we're talking about money and lawyers and negotiation, which, look, it can all be done. Like, I'm a firm believer anything can be negotiated. And let's say you are that artist who signs to Roc Nation Distribution, you become super successful, then there's a bidding war and every label wants you. I promise you can now get the best lawyers and you can figure out a way to either stay with Roc Nation Distribution or go elsewhere under the best terms possible. But even in that case, I think it's just important that artists and their teams have the knowledge. Again, I'm not an independent artist, I'm not a lawyer, but these were things that I found just by sort of eyeballing this agreement as a music journalist. So that would be really my advice to anyone considering Roc Nation Distribution or any kind of partnership in this industry. Ideally, you and a lawyer need to go over everything. If there are things you don't understand or you don't feel are fair, now is the time to vocalize them. And like with everything, a lot of it is leverage. If you are an unknown artist, you don't have any sort of numbers to your name, no wins on the board, you can't really go into Roc Nation guns blazing and telling them, these are the things I need you to change. But if you do become one of the bigger artists, these terms may kind of come back around, and you just don't want to be ignorant of that fact because they were here right in black and white. I mean, I found them just by Googling them. So there's really no excuse that you don't know what you're signing up for. So with that said, is Roc Nation Distribution a good deal? Like everything, it really depends. It depends on who the artist is, where they are in their life cycle, and what they hope to get out of it. If you are an artist who has a lot of affinity for Roc Nation and for Jay-Z and for the things they've done already in the music space, this may be a good look for you, where you go in and hopefully you do become successful, and that gets on the radar of Roc Nation. And all of a sudden, now you are kind of upstream, so to speak, in that building internally. So maybe you do get signed to their management deal, or maybe they are able to get you things like brand deals, like spaces that they do really well in. It's absolutely feasible. However, for most artists, and especially those who may not know what this deal is, I could see people getting really disappointed. You could sign to Roc Nation Distribution and all of a sudden you think, well, where's my Plains hat? Where's my invite to the brunch? Where's my Jay-Z verse? That's not a part of the starter pack. None of that is there. And they do mention services within this, like specifically pitching to playlists and syncs. But again, it's unclear what that actually entails. And it probably also depends how many people sign up. If thousands and thousands of people are utilizing this distribution platform, there's only so much in the corporate setting that they can do. What does that mean? And I think that's also really important to just manage your expectations. Don't assume that just because you're uploading your music, that means that, the high-level executives are personally pitching you over all of their A-list artists. And that's not to say that this should dissuade anyone either, but I think it's so important in this game to go beyond the headlines. So much of the reporting around really this distribution platform or anything related to Roc Nation is kind of, you have the Roc Nation lovers, the Roc Nation haters, and I think this goes beyond that because you are getting into ostensibly a very long-term, all-inclusive agreement with this company. So make sure that the dashboard that they're offering is giving you the services that you need, something you're actually going to use. Make sure that these terms you're amenable to, not just right now, but also think about, the near future and even like ultimately how this could affect you financially and otherwise, and just make a really informed decision. And more than anything, have a real lawyer go through these terms, have somebody explain to you, what are you signing? Because that's the thing about this agreement versus some other distributors. It is all encompassing and appears to be very long term with the terms not even defined. So this could be a very long term commitment and relationship. If it works well, that's incredible, but you just don't want to be one of those music industry horror stories where you sign something because of what you saw on social media or what you thought, and then you feel like you were kind of sold a bill of goods. And that's something where in this era, there's so much information. I mean, you could run everything, including this, through ChatGPT and ask it questions. Not a substitute for a real attorney, but I'm just putting it out there. And there's so much access to information and transparency, but there is a lot of smoke and mirrors too. There's a lot of people who talk about stuff who have no idea what they're talking about. And I think it's so important that artists, especially independent artists, know that you are the captain of your ship. You are the CEO, you're the one in charge. Everyone else can advise you, tell you what to do, but just be very clear. This is your career. This is your livelihood, and this is your life. So before you sign on the dotted line, or in this case, upload your records, just be very informed and know what you're getting into. So what are your thoughts on Roc Nation Distribution? Do you think now is a good time for Jay-Z to get in this distro game? Any of the things that I pointed out, are they also, questionable to you, red flags? How does this compare to other distributors, especially if you're an independent artist or somebody who has relationships or experience with other distributors? Let me know your thoughts. How does Roc Nation Distribution compare? Is it better, worse, neutral? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.